All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Bobby Vercoda here with Arctic Wolf, and I've got Patrick Castillo again here today. Hello, Patrick.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? I'm excited to get into this. Today we're talking about threat intelligence.
Yeah, we've got a really cool one. I think you'll see the reflection of everything that happens under the hood of, hey, how do we stay up to date in security? What's going on out there when we're peeking behind the curtain of what are bad actors doing? What's kind of the strategy here? So we'll start, I think, in a good spot with, well, what is cyber threat intelligence? And then going into well, why does this matter? Why are we talking about threat intelligence? Threat intelligence is really where we're looking to understand where is the risk or the threats coming from? How are they being exploited? How are they being used? What manner are they being targeted with? And so some of the real world ways we use threat intelligence
Mhm.
is monitoring things like the dark web. What are those scary bad actor hooded hackers that we all kind of picture with, bad things? What are they up to when we're looking through the dark web or seeing, hey, they went and attacked this group? How did they do it?
Mhm.
What was some of the detail around what they did, whether it's the type of tools that they attacked? What was some of the commands they did? Even all the way to the point of what time of day? When did
Yep.
they do it? Was it associated with, a holiday, as we see out there, targeted quite a bit that we can
Right.
expand on? And why that matters? It's similar to any kind of defensive strategy is, hey, if you're going to try to block something, we want to know about as much as we can before that, punch tries to land. Or is it an uppercut? Is it, to your left a little bit? That's some of the threat intelligence we try to use. And then really, I think Patrick has the idea of, well, once we have the intelligence, let's put some of those defensive pieces in play, like, hey, MFA, let's go to a pin code and or a push code, or hey, the firewalls, make sure we keep those updated on your behalf.
Yep.
So that's kind of the lay of the land of threat intelligence at a high level.
Yep. And we've mentioned several times throughout this series that you want to make sure that you're bringing in the expertise you need. You know, Making the threat intelligence is something that most companies aren't going to do. Partnering with someone like Arctic Wolf to that has those people that go and look at the dark web, they go and look at all of the things that they're seeing. In Tila, we see the stuff that's affecting our clients, but it's more of the results of what's affecting and not necessarily the causes of what's affecting. So, we there's a lot of free resources out there for threat intelligence feeds. Definitely make sure you're reaching out and looking at those because that helps you know what not just what hackers can do, but what they are actively doing in that time space.
Mhm. And I think that's a great point of how are we feeling it or experiencing it, because that's going to be kind of the ethos or how they try to put their signature on something. Even bad actors, they'll, when they lock down a device or run ransomware or malware, they will say you've been locked down by hackers on your device. Or they'll have the, hey, go to our website or publish on the dark web, hey, we got all of their data. Who wants
Hmm.
to pay for the key for all this information? And a lot of the times what we see is, hey, they're asking for a level of ransom, or we know that, kind of going back to a previous segment, are they actually going to enforce this ransom, or are they kind of like a 2 out of 5 star? They're not that trustworthy. They're not going to give the keys to the kingdom back, which that's something to consider when we understand where those bad actors are. So we have a full dark web monitoring team, threat research team that knows kind of the signatures of
Hmm.
how these bad actors do it, and then really trying to put us in play to say, are we up to date? Are we making sure we're following some of this? Are we keeping the tools and then some of those processes to keep people safe. Is there a new strategy with dress code policy update on phishing from this group, or they're trying to exploit this kind of software? And I'll go into some examples, but that's kind of what we see and how we're built with some of
Yeah.
that threat intelligence research.
And how we can use that to protect the SMBs, the small medium businesses, is we're looking at vulnerabilities constantly. I'm gonna kind of build a picture. There's way more vulnerabilities than you can reasonably get to at any given time. Well, if a threat intelligence team, Arctic Wolf, ISAL, something along those lines, says, hey, well, this one FortiGate vulnerability we are actively seeing being exploited. Well, now, as the MSP, managed service provider, I should prioritize fixing that FortiGate vulnerability across all my clients. Not to say we weren't already working towards that, but in the giant wall that is things that need to be fixed at any given time, having that intelligence to say, hey, this is getting exploited. Cool. Well, now that I know that this is actively being targeted, I'm gonna go fix it, because these bad guys, they send a ping. I'm just gonna say ping. They send a ping out to the whole internet and see what responds, and they're like, oh, well, the FortiGates on this port are all responding, and it means they're vulnerable. Now that's very much dumbing down how that works, but they can essentially just ping everybody, see who responds vulnerable, and attack those people.
Yeah, it's as simple as that, unfortunately, in a lot of cases. So with that threat intelligence, our goal is, hey, there are risks and vulnerabilities that happen every day. I'd probably bet every hour, there's some type of new vulnerability. That's where, hey, when we're looking to provide security, we've got a team just dedicated to staying up to date on what are those vulnerabilities, what are those risks within Tiva, and then can we leverage the data to say, what are those bad actors trying to do right now? Out of the list of 100 from today, they're trying to do 1, 6, and 25. Hey, let's go make sure that we've got those patches in play, or they're a part of what Intiva is already doing from a patching perspective, for example.
And
One example, yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
how about say another thing is sometimes there's a vulnerability, but there's not a patch yet. And some of the value I've seen from threat intelligence feeds is like, I'm trying to think of an example, but most commonly it seems to be around VPN type stuff. So there's this VPN that's vulnerable for whatever reason, and the patch hasn't come out yet. So the threat intelligence feed will say, hey, there's this VPN vulnerability that is being exploited actively right now. There's not a patch for it. You should disable it. So it's like, okay, well, then we have to talk to the client. Like, hey, this is actively being exploited, and there's not a patch for it yet. Can we disable it? And sometimes that's okay, sometimes it's not. Really depends on the business. But if it's not okay, then what I really like about these threat intel feeds is that typically it gives you some suggestions. So like, hey, disable it. If you can't disable it, disconnect it from your Active Directory. If you can't disconnect it from your Active Directory, add MFA, or not necessarily in that order. Typically, you'd have MFA before, but they give you these compensating controls if you can't necessarily fix it yet.
Risk mitigation, really what Patrick's getting at. And can we find another route, because it's not always a straightforward simple click of a button, as you just mentioned. Sometimes the vendors, they aren't even aware of how the vulnerability happened.
Yep.
And the bad actors do. All of a sudden you realize, like, whoa, Patrick, Bobby, like, how does that work? Well, we're at risk. And the compensating controls, right? Can we go ahead and add a layer on top of that so they can't directly access a firewall, for example, or get all the way to your admin account or user account?
Yeah,
and one of, yeah.
I was about to say, that makes me think of every security person's favorite email to wake up to, which is there's a new 0 day.
That's the triggering event right there. That'd be a good phishing simulation right there for those folks.
And just to expand, a 0 day is essentially some exploit that has come out that no one knew about before. Like, and I guess to expand on that, quite a lot of vulnerabilities that pop up because there are, you might know the better term for it, Bobby, but like threat researchers that are finding these vulnerabilities before the bad guys are finding them. Typically, they'll, like, let's just use FortiGate again. They'll say, "Hey, FortiGate, we found this vulnerability in your firewall." That's the nice way of doing it. They'll tell FortiGate, "Hey, we found this," and they'll fix it. What happens a lot of the time as well is someone will find it, they'll create a proof of concept, and they'll post it online, which is twofold. A, well, now, hey, I know it's vulnerable, I should fix it. B, well, now hackers have a proof of concept on how to use this hack.
It's a tough game to play, right? You can see you're stuck in a pickle.
Yep.
And that's a good point. And one of the stories we have relating to what you mentioned was we had the threat research team discover a new bypass, so a new way around a tool. And what we did was, with the threat intelligence we had, as we're, hey, vendor, we're seeing this out in the wild. Are you aware? Putting in a mitigation strategy, basically a way to detect until we have kind of formalized process. Say, if we're seeing this, let's make sure it's being detected and researched, because right now it's vulnerable until we patch that part of the wall, right? That's kind of what the vulnerability is, both patching technically and patching, metaphorically, a wall. And what we found was, hey, all of a sudden we're alerting because they're trying to use that exploit that was publicly disclosed, and there isn't a foolproof method. So we were able to say, whoa, hey, let's use that intelligence that we've got, create kind of a detection that plays around this type of event. So instead of targeting right in the middle, hey, before it gets to the middle, let's detect here, and make sure that, okay, here's the mitigating control, here's the strategies, here's what we can do until there's a full solution in
Mm-hmm.
play. So you can see where, hey, that's one event. Well, hey, that happens daily, right? As
Yep.
we try to keep up to date. And it's accelerating because, hey, can I go ask AI or the chat to make this code a little bit more confusing, or
Yep.
obfuscate, or camouflage yourself so we can get around some of this? And that's why, hey, there's a lot of different vectors. We want to be able to see what's going on so we can
Yep.
protect what we know.
Yeah, and if we want, let's wrap up with you giving us some of those real world examples of stuff that you've seen.
Yeah. What we had happen was, on a very common antivirus, and this was a while ago now, won't name names, but basically there was a brand new bypass in play, and this organization had it, and they did all the controls. They did everything right at the end of the day. They had the correct pieces in play. What happened was this bad actor group effectively had created this way to bypass this antivirus. Somebody had bought it and was running it against this organization. So what happened was it got past the detection capability. They went in, changed the timestamps of the kind of event viewer, the audit logging, and what happened was it passed the threshold because it wasn't able to use the curation of, hey, if they're trying to brute force in this intermediate period, detect. And if it's this type
Yep.
of like hash, well, they were changing essentially like the timestamps and the audit logs and the detection knowledge of, if I see ABC, detect. Well, it went I see ABB, and
Yep.
there's no knowledge in there of how to detect it. So that was one way you realize, whoa, like this is complex. This is like real world strategies with this threat feed, with knowing, hey, it's out there. But that's why we want to be able to get all those scopes. We want to have multiple walls in play,
Eh,
and keeping people up to date.
Yeah, that goes back to what we've said in previous segments, where it's like the more you innovate the protection, the more you innovate the hackers. So just
Yeah.
having that multiple layers, like you said, it just helps cover for you. If they bypass your EDR, your antivirus, well, now you've got your MDR, or you've got your, SIEM, you've got your insert other tool here.
Yeah. It's like with anything, right? Staying up to date, reading the newest blog or the newest trend, whatever it might be. Very similar concept in this case. And then, hey, positioning yourself in a good place. So quite a bit there. That's kind of an interesting one, a fun one. You
Yep.
realize why there's so much underneath, even what we see that's happening for security.
Yeah. And that's all for today, folks. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome.